She gave her last $10 to help a stranger get home. Only later she learned he was a millionaire who saved her life. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain came down in steady sheets that night, turning the platform of the downtown train station into a mirror of trembling puddles and flickering light. It was close to 10 o'clock, the last trains already delayed, and most passengers had disappeared into the storm. Emily stood beneath the flickering sign, clutching a paper cup of cheap coffee that had gone cold. She had just lost another job. Her wallet held only one $10 bill, and her landlord had given her until the end of the week to pay the rent. At the far end of the platform, she noticed a man sitting on a bench, soaked from head to toe. His clothes were worn, his shoes torn at the sides, his hands trembling from the cold. He looked like he had not eaten in days. People passed by, pretending not to see him. Emily hesitated, torn between fear and compassion. The man looked up, his voice weak but steady. "Miss, I am sorry to ask, but I need to get home. I lost my wallet, and the ticket machine does not take change. The train leaves in 15 minutes. Could you spare $10? I will pay you back, I promise." Emily felt her heart tighten. $10 was all she had left, the money meant for breakfast tomorrow. Her eyes fell on the torn strap of her purse, the frayed edge of her coat. She could almost hear her mother's voice, soft but firm, reminding her that kindness is the only thing that never loses its value. She stepped forward and pressed the damp bill into his hand. "Please take it," she said. "Just make sure you get home safely." The man stared at her, surprised, as if he could not believe what had just happened. His lips trembled. "Thank you. I do not know what to say." "You already did." Emily smiled faintly. "Good luck." "No." The train roared into the station, doors opening with a hiss of steam. The man climbed aboard, turning once to wave through the fogged window. Emily stood there, rain dripping from her hair, watching as the train lights vanished into the night. When silence returned, she slipped her empty wallet back into her pocket. The cold wind bit her fingers, but somewhere deep inside, a small warmth lingered. She had no money, no job, no plan for tomorrow, yet for the first time in a long while, she felt certain she had done something right. As she turned to leave the platform, she whispered to herself, $10 is not much, but maybe it is enough to change something. She did not know it yet, but that single act of kindness was about to change everything, because the man she had just helped was not a drifter at all. He was someone whose name would soon echo far beyond that dark, rainy station. And before long, the girl who had given her last $10 would discover that miracles sometimes arrive disguised as strangers. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the sky still looked tired, heavy with gray clouds that refused to break. Emily woke up on the narrow couch of her small apartment, wrapped in a thin blanket that no longer kept the cold away. Her shoes were still damp from the night before. The little paper cup from the train station sat on the table beside her, half crushed, like a silent reminder of what she had done. She opened her wallet. It was empty except for a faded photo of her mother smiling in front of a diner that had closed years ago. That single $10 bill, the last piece of paper that had kept her afloat, was gone, given to a stranger she might never see again. For a brief moment, she wondered if he had even used it to buy a ticket home, or if he had simply disappeared into the city's endless rain. Emily rubbed her tired eyes and whispered to herself, "Maybe I should have kept it. $10 could have covered at least a sandwich and a bus ride." But even as she said the words, her chest tightened with guilt. Something deep inside told her that helping him had been right, even if it left her with nothing. Her phone buzzed on the table. A reminder popped up. Interview at 9:30. She grabbed her jacket and rushed out, hair still wet, heart racing. The city felt different in the daylight, no longer lonely, just cold and busy. Every honk and footstep echoed through her, like a clock ticking down on borrowed time. When she reached the office building, she was already 10 minutes late. The receptionist gave her a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. "I'm sorry," Emily said breathlessly. "The train was delayed." I'll be. The woman shrugged. Mr. Turner has already started another meeting. You can leave your resume. Emily stood there for a moment, clutching the manila envelope, as if it contained her last bit of hope. Then she forced a smile, nodded, and walked out. The street outside smelled of coffee and exhaust. She found a bench and sat down, watching the morning crowd rush by, people in suits, people with umbrellas, people who looked like they belonged somewhere. Her phone, battery icon, flashed red. She opened her messages. 2 missed calls from her landlord. Her heart sank. The rent was due, and there was nothing left to pay with. She imagined the conversation waiting for her that evening, another argument, another apology that changed nothing. Still, she could not bring herself to regret what she had done. The memory of the man's face, the relief in his eyes as he clutched the damp ticket, kept returning to her mind. She told herself that maybe he had reached his home safely. Maybe that small act had meant something. By sunset, the city lights began to blink awake. Emily returned to her apartment building, climbed the 3 flights of stairs, and found an envelope taped to her door. Her heart raced as she tore it open, hoping for a job offer, but it was only another warning from the landlord. 2 days left. After that, the lock changes. She leaned her forehead against the door, her breath shaking. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach and rain-soaked carpet. Inside, the apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. She sat on the floor, hugging her knees, staring at the ceiling that leaked in one corner. For the first time, doubt crept in like a shadow. She whispered, "What if I made a mistake? What if that man never needed my help at all?" But even as the words escaped her lips, she remembered his trembling hands, his quiet gratitude, and that simple sentence, "I will pay you back." The memory softened the fear that pressed on her chest. Emily lay down, eyes heavy, telling herself that tomorrow she would find a way, another interview, another chance. She did not know that somewhere across the city, in a high-rise office glowing above the clouds, the man she had helped was holding that same $10 bill, staring at it with a look of quiet determination. Because for him, that moment at the train station had not been a random act of kindness. It had been a turning point, one that would soon lead him back to her. The next morning began with the sound of traffic echoing through the narrow street below her window. Emily sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the envelope on her nightstand. The landlord's warning felt heavier than the walls closing in around her. Her rent was overdue, her savings were gone, and every plan she had made seemed to crumble before it could even begin. She folded the paper carefully, placed it in a drawer, and whispered, "One more day. Just one more." Then she tied her hair, slipped into her worn shoes, and left the apartment with quiet determination. The sky had cleared after 2 days of rain, but puddles still shimmered on the sidewalk like little mirrors. Emily stopped at a small soup kitchen on 4th Avenue, a place she had once volunteered at during better times. She remembered the woman who ran it, an elderly lady named Ruth, with white hair and a smile that could warm the coldest morning. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, bread, and hope. Ruth noticed her immediately and waved her over. "My dear, it has been months. You look tired. Are you all right?" Emily tried to smile. "I am fine. Just between jobs again." "Then stay for breakfast," Ruth insisted. "You can help me set up the tables. You know, like the old days." Emily hesitated but nodded. She rolled up her sleeves and began placing cups, spoons, and trays. The rhythm of the simple work steadied her breathing. Around her, volunteers moved quickly, preparing to serve the long line of people waiting outside. As she wiped the counter, Ruth leaned closer and said softly, "Kindness has a strange way of coming back, you know. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it never disappears." Emily looked up, caught by the gentleness in Ruth's voice. "You really believe that?" Ruth chuckled. "I have seen it too many times not to." For a brief moment, Emily felt something ease inside her chest. She could not explain it, but the old woman's words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. When breakfast began, Emily took a ladle and started serving soup to each person who came through the line. Faces blurred into a quiet rhythm of need and gratitude. Some smiled shyly, others avoided her eyes, but every thank you made her heart a little lighter. After the rush slowed, Ruth handed her a paper bag. "Here, take this. Bread, fruit, and some coffee for later." "Oh no, I cannot." "You can," Ruth interrupted. "You help others. Let someone help you." Emily accepted it with a quiet, "Thank you." As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. Outside, a cold wind blew across the street, carrying the faint hum of city noise. She tightened her coat around her shoulders and thought again about the stranger at the train station. Was he safe now? Did he make it home? Or had she been foolish to believe his story? The question lingered, but this time it did not sting. Something in her heart told her that her choice had mattered, even if she never saw the result. Across town, in a tall glass building overlooking the river, the same man she had helped, Ethan Ward, stood by his office window, holding that exact $10 bill. It was wrinkled, rain-stained, and soft from being folded so many times. His assistant had asked if he wanted to replace it with a new one for the foundation display, but he refused. He kept running his thumb along its edges, remembering the girl's face, the way she smiled despite the rain. He had been traveling incognito that night, dressed down to see how his foundation's new charity system worked. But after that encounter, the test had become something else. That small act of kindness had shaken him more than any business success ever had. Ethan turned to his reflection in the window and murmured, "She gave me her last $10. I have to find her." Oh, he did not know her name or where she lived, but he knew one thing for certain. No kindness should go unanswered. Back on 4th Avenue, Emily began her walk home, unaware that somewhere, a man she barely knew was beginning a search that would soon bring their worlds together again. A week later, the wind carried the smell of roasted coffee and fresh rain through the narrow streets of the city. Emily hurried across the crosswalk, clutching a stack of flyers she had picked up from a local cafe that needed part-time help. She was still living day to day, stretching every meal, still searching for something that felt like solid ground. But that morning, something different hung in the air, an energy she could not name, as if the world had quietly turned in her favor. When she passed the soup kitchen, Ruth called out to her, "Emily, wait, we have a visitor today. Someone from one of the city foundations. He says he is here to observe how we operate." Emily smiled politely. "That sounds important. I hope he is generous." Ruth laughed softly. "Maybe he will see how hard you work and hire you." Emily waved her hand. "I am just helping, nothing more." But inside, she hoped Ruth was right. The soup kitchen buzzed with movement. Volunteers carried boxes of supplies, and the smell of warm stew filled the air. Emily slipped on an apron and joined the line, her hands moving automatically as she served bowl after bowl. The door opened again, letting in a cold gust, and a man stepped inside. He was tall, clean-shaven, dressed simply but with an air of quiet confidence. His dark coat was damp from the drizzle, and when he pushed back the hood, Emily's breath caught for a moment. There was something familiar about his face, the sharp eyes, the steady calm in his voice as he greeted Ruth. "Good morning. I am Ethan Ward from the Wardlife Foundation," he said. "We have been supporting this center for several years. I wanted to see your work in person." Ruth's eyes lit up. "Mr. Ward, what an honor. Please let me introduce you to our volunteers." Emily wiped her hands on her apron and turned, her heart skipping. She remembered the eyes before the train left the station, the same quiet gratitude she had seen that rainy night. But this man looked different now, composed, powerful, someone who clearly belonged in a world far above hers. When their eyes met, a spark of recognition flickered. He studied her for a moment, longer than necessary. Then he smiled gently. "We have met before, have we not?" Emily froze, unsure what to say. "I do not think so, sir," she murmured, her voice almost trembling. Ethan tilted his head, a trace of warmth in his gaze. "Maybe I am mistaken." He turned to Ruth, asking questions about funding and programs, but every few minutes his eyes drifted back to Emily. She avoided his gaze, busying herself with trays and dishes, though her pulse quickened with every passing glance. When the crowd thinned out near noon, Ethan stepped closer to her table. "You do this every day?" he asked. "Not every day," Emily said softly. "Only when I can. I have been looking for work." He nodded. "You seem to care a lot about helping others." "Oh, I just do what I can," she replied. "Sometimes small things matter." Ethan smiled faintly, hearing the echo of her words from that night. He wanted to tell her the truth right then, that she had changed him, that her kindness had started a ripple effect that saved dozens of lives through his new initiative. But he held back. He wanted to see her as she was, without the weight of gratitude or power between them. Before leaving, he placed a business card on the counter. "The foundation is expanding," he said. "If you are ever looking for steady work, come by. Ask for me." Emily picked up the card after he left. Her eyes widened at the name printed in silver letters, Ethan Ward. She whispered it aloud, feeling the syllables roll across her tongue. The realization hit her slowly, like light spreading through fog. That was him, the man from the train station. Her hands trembled as she turned the card over. On the back, written in neat handwriting, were 3 simple words: "Thank you again." Emily stood there for a long moment, her heart pounding with disbelief. The stranger she had helped with her last $10 was not a drifter after all. He was a millionaire, someone whose name appeared in newspapers, someone who could change lives with a single decision. She pressed the card against her chest, whispering, "What are you doing here, Ethan Ward?" Outside, through the window, she caught a glimpse of him stepping into a black car waiting by the curb. For a fleeting second, he looked back through the rain-slicked glass, and their eyes met once more. Neither of them smiled this time. There was no need to. Both knew something unspoken had just begun again. Something that had started with $10 on a rainy night and was far from over. 2 days later, Emily stood outside the tall glass building that bore the silver letters Ward Life Foundation. She held Ethan's business card in her hand, tracing the edges as if it might disappear if she let go. The reflection of the city skyline shimmered in the windows above her. And for a long moment, she hesitated. Inside, people in suits moved with purpose. The lobby gleamed, every surface polished, every step echoing against marble floors. Emily took a deep breath and walked in. The receptionist greeted her kindly, asking if she had an appointment. "I was told to ask for Mr. Ethan Ward," Emily said, her voice steady though her heart raced. Moments later, she was guided to a private office on the 22nd floor. The space was open, lined with books, photographs, and a view of the river that stretched toward the horizon. Ethan stood near the window, his jacket draped over a chair, his sleeves rolled up. When he turned and saw her, his expression softened. "I hoped you would come," he said quietly. Emily smiled nervously. "I was not sure I should." "I meant what I said," Ethan replied. "We are expanding our outreach program. I want you to join the team. The way you treated people at the soup kitchen, how genuine you were, it is exactly what we need here." Emily blinked, unsure how to respond. "You do not even know me." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe I do. You gave me $10 one night at the train station. I was cold, wet, and lost. You had no reason to help me, but you did." Her breath caught. "So you remember." "I never forgot," he said. "That small act of kindness reminded me why I started this foundation in the first place." Emily looked down, embarrassed. "I thought you were just a traveler who needed help." "I was pretending to be," Ethan admitted. "I wanted to see how people truly lived, how they treated strangers when no one was watching. That night, you showed me the kind of goodness this world still has." There was a pause, soft, full of meaning. The noise from the city below seemed to fade away. Ethan continued, his voice sincere. "I want to offer you a full-time position here. You would help manage community projects, work directly with people who need support. It is not charity, Emily. It is purpose." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to believe him, but fear whispered that she did not belong in a place like this. "Why me?" she asked. "There are people more qualified." "Oh, because you understand struggle," he said simply, "and because you act with heart." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan reached into his desk and pulled out a small frame. Inside was the same $10 bill she had given him, creased, rain-stained, but carefully preserved. "I kept it," he said, "to remind me that sometimes the smallest gesture can change everything." Emily's throat tightened. She nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then I would be honored to help." Ethan smiled, extending his hand. "Welcome to Ward Life, Emily." As their hands met, she felt something shift inside her, a quiet certainty that her life was about to begin again. Weeks passed quickly. The chill of early winter crept into the city. But inside the Ward Life Foundation, Emily's days were full of motion, purpose, and a warmth she had not felt in years. She arrived early every morning, helping organize donation drives, contacting shelters, and planning outreach events. Her desk was small, tucked near the window, but she loved it. For the first time, she belonged somewhere. Ethan often visited her department, checking progress and listening more than he spoke. He was different from any employer she had known, humble, attentive, and quietly observant. Sometimes, he would pause by her desk, offering advice or sharing stories about how a single act of generosity had saved an entire community. Every time he spoke, Emily felt that same spark she had seen at the train station, the mix of strength and sincerity that had made her trust him without question. One evening, as the staff prepared to leave, Ethan walked by and noticed Emily still at her desk. "You are the last one here again," he said. Emily smiled without looking up. "There is a charity dinner tomorrow night, and we are short on volunteers." He chuckled softly. "You never slow down, do you?" "I'm just trying to make myself useful," she said. "You already are," he replied, his tone quiet but certain. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to still. There was something unspoken between them, gratitude, admiration, maybe something more, but neither dared to name it. The next day, the charity dinner was held at a restored warehouse downtown. Warm light spilled across the polished floors, and laughter echoed through the hall. Emily moved between tables, helping serve meals and greeting donors. Ethan stood across the room, watching her with quiet pride. She carried herself with grace and kindness, unaware of the eyes that followed her. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the hall was nearly empty, Emily found Ethan in the corner, gathering leftover name cards. She approached him, her shoes clicking softly on the floor. "Everything went perfectly," she said. People were smiling. "That has to mean something." "It means you did well," he said, placing the cards in a box. She hesitated before speaking again. "Why did you really ask me to work here, Ethan? Was it because you felt you owed me something?" He turned to her, his expression serious. "No, Emily. I do not hire people out of guilt. I offered you this job because you reminded me of what this foundation was meant to stand for. You gave when you had nothing. That kind of heart cannot be taught." Emily looked down, her voice trembling. "I do not know if I deserve any of this." Ethan stepped closer, his tone gentle but firm. "You do. You earned it." Silence filled the space between them. She could hear the hum of distant traffic, the soft echo of rain beginning to fall outside. Ethan finally smiled. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be another long day." Emily nodded, turning to leave. But as she walked toward the door, she glanced back. Ethan was standing by the window, the city lights reflected in his eyes, holding the same quiet look he had that night at the station, like he had found something worth holding on to, and he was afraid to lose it again. The next morning began with a quiet unease in the air. The Wardlife Foundation was buzzing with activity, but the usual warmth felt distant. Emily sensed it the moment she walked in. People whispered in the hallway, their eyes darting toward her and then quickly away. On her desk lay a newspaper folded neatly, the headline printed in bold letters. "Unknown woman gains millionaire's favor after giving him $10. Her heart dropped. The article included a photo of her at the soup kitchen, another of Ethan beside her at the charity dinner. The story twisted their connection into something ugly, suggesting she had used her kindness to climb her way into his world. Emily's hands trembled as she read the words. Her chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. Just as she pushed the paper aside, Ethan appeared at her office door. His face was calm, but she could see the tension behind his eyes. "I saw it," he said softly. "It is not true." "But everyone thinks it is," Emily whispered. "They think I helped you for attention." "I will handle this," Ethan assured her. "Please, trust me." "Oh." But she could see the doubt flicker in his expression, a shadow that broke something fragile between them. The moment he left, she sat back in her chair, staring at the city skyline beyond the glass. The very world she had begun to trust was turning against her. By afternoon, the story spread online. Comments flooded the foundation's social media pages, accusing her of manipulation and deceit. Donors began to call, questioning the integrity of the organization. For the first time, Ethan's name was attached to scandal. When she returned to her apartment that evening, Emily found reporters waiting near the entrance. Their flashbulbs cut through the dark as they shouted questions she could not bear to answer. She ran inside, locked the door, and pressed her back against the wall. Her phone buzzed with messages, half from people she knew and half from strangers. Some offered sympathy. Others were cruel. Tears stung her eyes as she whispered, "What have I done?" The next morning, she packed a small bag. She left her employee badge and a short note on her desk. "I never wanted to bring trouble to you or the foundation. Please take care of yourself. Thank you for believing in me." When Ethan found the note hours later, his stomach twisted. He called her number again and again, but it went straight to voicemail. Outside, the rain returned, pouring hard against the windows. Ethan stared at the $10 bill framed on his wall, realizing that the same kindness that had brought them together was now tearing their worlds apart. He turned to his assistant and said quietly, "Find out who leaked that story." Because deep down, Ethan knew this was not an accident. Someone had wanted to destroy what they had built, and he would not rest until he found the truth. Days turned into a blur of gray skies and unanswered calls. Ethan barely slept, his mind circling the same question again and again: who had started the rumor, and why? The foundation's reputation trembled under the weight of the story, but what hurt him more was Emily's silence. She had vanished completely. Her phone was disconnected, her apartment empty. Her neighbors said she left early one morning with only a suitcase. Then one evening, while reviewing old security footage from the office, Ethan saw something strange. The leak had not come from an outsider. It came from someone inside his team, an employee who had access to internal photos and emails. The man had secretly sold the story to a gossip site for money. Ethan closed his eyes, anger rising like a storm. "So that is how they ruined her," he muttered. "They sold her kindness for profit." The next morning, he called a press conference. Reporters packed into the glass hall of Wardlife Foundation, cameras flashing as Ethan stepped to the podium. He looked exhausted but resolute. Behind him, a large display showed the framed $10 bill, the symbol of the story that had begun it all. "I called you here," Ethan began, "because the truth matters. A week ago, an article accused a young woman named Emily Ross of manipulating me for fame. That accusation is false." The room fell silent. "Months ago," he continued, "I was traveling without an assistant, testing how our outreach programs were operating. I lost my wallet and had no way to get home. At a small downtown train station, a stranger, Emily, gave me her last $10. She did not know my name, my title, or my wealth. She simply helped someone she thought was in need." He paused, his voice steady but emotional. "That moment reminded me that humanity still exists in its purest form. She expected nothing. And in return, I offered her a chance to work here, because people like her are the reason this foundation exists." Oh. Cameras flashed rapidly as his words spread across screens and live feeds. Ethan held up a document. "The person responsible for leaking the false story has been removed and reported to authorities. I will not allow greed to destroy someone whose only crime was compassion." For a moment, the room was utterly still. Then a hand rose from the back. A reporter asked, "Where is Miss Ross now?" Ethan's expression softened. "I do not know," he admitted. "But I hope she is listening. Because she deserves to hear this. Emily, you did not lose your dignity. You reminded all of us what it means to believe in kindness." Later that night, far from the city's glow, Emily sat in a small diner on the edge of town, watching the live broadcast on an old television above the counter. Her hands shook as she listened to his voice echo through the static. Tears welled in her eyes. She pressed her palm against her chest, whispering, "He found the truth." Outside, the rain had stopped. The neon lights reflected against the wet pavement as she stood up, heart pounding. It was time to go home. The city sparkled beneath a bright morning sky when Emily finally returned. The air smelled fresh after the long rain, and the streets hummed with the sound of car horns and laughter. She stood outside the Wardlife Foundation, staring up at the familiar glass building that once felt too high, too far from her world. Now, it simply felt like home she had been away from for too long. Inside, employees turned in surprise as she stepped through the lobby doors. Her clothes were simple, her hair tied back, but there was a quiet confidence in her eyes. The receptionist smiled warmly. "Miss Ross," she said, "Mr. Ward is expecting you." Ethan was in the main hall, surrounded by reporters and volunteers preparing for the first $10 Miracle charity event, a new annual project inspired by her story. When he turned and saw her standing there, the noise of the room seemed to fade away. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Ethan walked toward her, his voice low and sincere. "You came back." Emily nodded. "I saw the broadcast. You did not have to defend me, but you did." "I had to," he said. "You gave me hope when I had lost mine. You reminded me what this foundation should stand for." Her eyes glistened. "I thought I ruined everything." Ethan shook his head. "You saved it." He reached into his jacket and pulled out the small glass frame. Inside was the same $10 bill, creased, faded, and precious. "This belongs to you," he said, holding it out. Emily hesitated, her hands trembling. "No, it is yours now. You turned it into something that helps others." He smiled. "Then let us share it, together." At that moment, the volunteers around them began to clap, the sound rising like soft thunder in the hall. Cameras flashed, capturing the scene as Ethan turned toward the crowd. "This," he said, lifting the frame, "is where it all began. One act of kindness, one choice to give, even when there was nothing left to give." The applause grew louder. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of peace this time, not sorrow. Ethan looked back at her, his voice gentle but firm. "The foundation is launching a new fund today, in your name, the Emily Ross Initiative, to help those who believe they have nothing left but still choose to give." Emily covered her mouth in shock, shaking her head. "You cannot name it after me." "I already did," Ethan said with a quiet smile. "Because you reminded us all that compassion is the greatest wealth." She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You really believe that, do you not?" Ethan's eyes softened. "I do, and I believe in you." He reached for her hand, the same way he had done that night at the train station, when everything began with a single $10 bill. Around them, the crowd continued to cheer as the music swelled and the lights brightened. Emily looked at him through her tears and said softly, "We both found our way home." And with that, the man she once helped with her last $10 pulled her gently into his arms. The frame glimmered under the lights between them, a small reminder of how a single act of kindness had built a lifetime of hope.